Yeah, that movement is growing. The rest of the world is saying, why do we need a middleman if we're going to deal amongst each other? Why do we need the dollar?
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for September 2nd through September 9th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we have a very limited supply of backdated silver Australian Kookaburra 10-ounce coins at just $3.10 over spot per ounce. Next, 1-ounce backdated platinum maple leaves are just $80 over spot. And finally, we have compelling pricing on various pre-33 American gold coins. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today is our good friend Mario Innecco from the very popular Innecco64 YouTube channel. Mario, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, Elijah. Nice to be with you again.
Well, it's great to have you today. Now, we've been tracking this on our channel and with you for quite a while about the BRICS moving away from the US dollar. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and many more countries now, and probably many, many more to come. And it seems like there's a trend of these countries accumulating gold and moving away from the US dollar. One of the latest developments we have is that Russia has announced that they're going to continue buying gold, and a lot of it. So your perspective on that announcement and how that's going to impact things.
Yeah, they came out a couple of days ago, announced that they're basically going to sell their oil for gold from today until 30 days forward, so in the next month. And I think they multiplied the amount of gold they're going to buy from like $10 million to $92 million a day, and it adds up to about 30 tons for a month. So it's quite significant. And the timing and the announcement is interesting because you usually don't announce that kind of stuff. So maybe they're giving a kind of signal to the other BRICS nations and other nations that are looking to attend the BRICS summit on October 22nd to 24th, that the way forward in the BRICS monetary system is to have some gold. I'm not saying they're going to use gold to trade, but they could use gold as a reserve instead of the dollar. And I think a lot of these countries, they are not completely abandoning the dollar, because maybe if they're doing business, like China is still doing business with the US and other countries, if they have to buy stuff from the US, they'll have to use dollars. The only country that seems to not be in that situation right now is Russia, because of all the sanctions. But like you said, I think, that movement is growing. The rest of the world is saying, why do we need a middleman if we're going to deal amongst each other? Why do we need the dollar?
It is very frightening in that respect also that the BRICS have been expanding with, I think they added 4 or 5 countries to the group at the beginning of this year. But now it seems like even Turkey, which is a NATO member currently, is looking to join the BRICS. So where do you see this heading then, when even, allies of the West are starting to look at BRICS?
Yeah, I mean, Turkey, I guess they want to, it's a country that is partly in Europe, even though it's a small part, and most of it in Asia. So they want both feet, they try to play both sides. But the other reason why Turkey, I think, is applying for BRICS is that they never had any luck applying to be a part of the European Union. Europeans never really were too keen on having them. And yes, the fact that they're part of NATO is a huge thing as well. I think after the US, they've got the biggest armed forces in NATO, Turkey. And like you said, in the beginning of the year, I think it was 6 or 7 countries that actually joined BRICS. Saudi Arabia they're supposed to have joined, and I think they have, but they're not really publicizing it. And there's going to be 47, I think, guest countries going to the BRICS summit in October. And recently, I think there was an IMF meeting run by Russia in Moscow, and like 140 countries attended. So yeah, it's huge, and I think it's still underestimated by the West, the mainstream in the West, by Wall Street, by the City of London. They still kind of what the view they have is that, well, they'll never challenge us, but I think they're wrong. And I'm not saying this because I'm pro BRICS, but just because it's going to affect us here in the UK and the US. Because as I've said many times, what it will mean is that these countries are going to need our currencies a lot less. And that means they're not going to really be buying as much of our currencies or investing as much in our currencies. So they're going to become worth less and less. And that's just going to hurt, aside from all the debts and borrowing that we're doing in the West and deficit spending. That's also going to hurt the purchasing power of our currencies. And, and that's why gold keeps going higher and higher versus all currencies, even the BRICS currencies, but it's going to particularly hurt us in the West.
Can you expand on how it's going to hurt us? Because I know, as you mentioned, the mainstream media is not really paying attention to this. People in the mainstream are saying, it's just a group of small countries, insignificant countries. And it's like, wait a second, you have China and India, the biggest populations in the world of any countries. You have Russia with I think the biggest nuclear arsenal. So, I mean, it seems like these are not small nations in any respect, and this could have a huge impact on things going forward. So what do you think it'll mean for people here in the US? You're in the UK, your perspective.
I think the biggest way it's going to affect us is that the BRICS countries that already are in place, 10 or 11, they control a lot of commodities, hard assets, energy, and the other countries that want to join the same. They're mostly in Asia and Africa. And what that means is that it's not going to be as easy for the West to control commodities and commodities prices, and we're going to have to pay more for it. I think it's the ex-guy from Credit Suisse. I forgot his name. He's got a Hungarian name, but he said that there's like a war now for commodities, and BRICS they're gonna control the commodities and hard assets. So unless the U.S. And the West, let's say Europe, allow their economies to develop and to exploit for commodities, which is something that doesn't look like they want to do with this Green New Deal and green agenda. And they seem to not want to allow for extraction of minerals. Things are going to get a lot worse, I think. And the other thing is, if our currencies are not, let's say if countries around the world don't buy as many treasuries or as many gilts in the UK or European government bonds, that means that unless the central banks start QE and buying these bonds, interest rates are going to be higher than they normally would have been, and that's going to hurt our economies. And I know interest rates have been going down, but I think they probably would have gone down even more if we weren't having so much trouble in the world with sanctions, with BRICS, because if we're cooperating with the rest of the world, they wouldn't have a reason to start a BRICS block or anything. They'd be cooperating with us. So that's why it will hurt us, in my opinion. And it looks like, we forget that the West is a small part of the world population and the resources now, and their economies are growing faster and faster, and they have better demographics than we do.
And what is your perspective, I guess, on if you look at the US, we at least try to espouse this idea of freedom, right, and democracy and the will of the people, right, is the idea, and also many of the countries in Europe, at least, in some way, are focused on that. But if you look at the countries that that BRICS is made out of, really have different ways of running their government, right, and that we're maybe unfamiliar with and that aren't necessarily the best, you could argue, obviously. So your perspective on that, and if the BRICS nations are growing in influence, does that spell disaster for our forms of government? Or what do you think about freedom going into the future here?
Well, I'm all for freedom and free markets and freedom of the individual, but it's something that has been chipped away at in the West. Actually, you've seen what's happened here in the UK with the riots and how they've cracked down on what they call far-right thugs, even though they're just people who are most of them were just protesting about policies. And in the US as well, we're seeing that we saw recently, is it Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, admitting that the government, the Biden administration asked the company to censor people. So, and I think the BRICS nations, we are told in the West that they're authoritarian. They don't have strong democratic principles. But we've been in the West for the last 25, 30 years interfering and trying to bring democracy to these countries. And all we have done is destabilize it. And I think these countries, they think we are hypocritical, and I can understand why they say that. You just have to look at what happened in Iraq in 2003. We went in there and based on a lie, really, about the weapons of mass destruction. And then we destabilized other countries like Libya. And there's so many of them, Panama as well. The U.S. has been interfering as well in elections since the 50s. So I think these people are saying, yes, we might not have the same institutions as you, but you have to respect us. And even if I don't agree with the way China's run, I think they run their own house. And I think that's what, and I think these countries have strengthened economically so much in the last 20 years that now they have the wherewithal to stand up to the West. And I'm not taking sides here. I'm just telling you how I see it.
I mean, one way that we can take a stand, right, for freedom is to own physical precious metals, kind of take our funds at least outside of the matrix in that small way. I did want to ask you, maybe, I know the UK has been, I guess, under fire for certain regulations they have had for free speech. So how have you maybe stood up for freedom, or how are you navigating that in your country?
Well, you have to be careful, I guess, now online what you say. But I try to stay away a little bit from the politics, and I try to focus on precious metals. And some people might say, "Oh, all you think about is money," but it's not true. It's just that precious metals and having savings, because that's what it is, protects you in times of crisis. And I think things are going to get chaotic in the West. And the trick will be to hold on to your gold and silver through the crisis and see what happens after the dust settles. I just saw a post today by a guy that I follow, a Chinese guy from Hong Kong, and he was saying that his grandfather was a banker before China became communist, in the Republic of China in Shanghai. And the nationalist government at the time, before 1949, in 1948, actually, they confiscated a lot of all the people's gold, but his grandfather was able to hide the gold for him and his clients, and eventually, they were able to move to Hong Kong and start again and thrive. But so that's what it means. It means you might have to move, but if you have your gold, you can go anywhere, and that's how it keeps you free. I think personally, I think it's really hard to try to fight the powers that be on an individual basis, you have to basically fight for your self-reliance and sovereignty. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to people as well. I know Doug Casey is the international man, right? And he has a lot of experience. Maybe I'd point to the interviews we've done with him to talk about, relocating and locating in different countries as well. If your own government starts being too tyrannical. So we do appreciate your time today. I guess any last thoughts you had, Mario, on, I guess, really reclaiming your own personal freedom and the path forward?
Yeah, I mean, relocating and options are really important. And I grew up in Brazil, but my dad had Italian ancestry. So in the 80s, he found out that he could take an Italian passport, and that's how we were able to move to Europe with no problem. So there are a lot of Americans out there who are of Italian descent or German or French or Portuguese. They look it up, maybe get another passport. So if things get bad, you always have an option. What about me here in the UK? Well, right now I'm still okay, but you never know. Hopefully things won't get that bad. But the hope I have is that the whole system, the fiat currency system, implodes, and then a lot of these policies, authoritarian policies we're seeing in the West, won't be able to be implemented.
No, I think I'm thinking of what Rafi Farber has talked about, how when the dollar collapses, it really ends a lot of these wars as well, because of the military industrial complex and kind of how the dollar is ultimately funding a lot of these wars here. So it seems like, while it will be difficult, maybe a lot of the corruption or the system not working very well will be able to rebuild after a currency crisis.
Yeah, and the trick is, what will we get after that? In France in the 1790s, they got Napoleon after everything imploded, and that didn't go very well either.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, why we're here is to, educate people and really think about how do we reclaim our freedom, right? And make sure that we don't need the government to save us and step in like that. So we really appreciate your time today. If our viewers are interested in learning more of your work, they can go to Innecco 64 on YouTube. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I post a video every day, and I do a live stream on Sunday. I cover markets, economics. I put a lot of history into things. I look at history and try to see what's happening today and how that could affect us. And I'm also on X or Twitter at Innecco 1964.
Fantastic, Mario. Thank you so much for your time today, and God bless.
You're welcome.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for September 2nd through September 9th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we have a very limited supply of backdated silver Australian Kookaburra 10-ounce coins at just $3.10 over spot per ounce. Next, 1-ounce backdated platinum maple leaves are just $80 over spot. And finally, we have compelling pricing on various pre-33 American gold coins. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.